Welcome back. As I mentioned in my last video, I'm trying something new, where when I have several lead chess games that I want to analyze, and instead of trying to crunch them all into one video, I'm trying to make several shorter videos. And we'll see how that goes. If that experiment works out, I'll keep doing it. This is the game that I'm working on now. Here I was ahead -7. Well, number one, I didn't know that, because this pawn here, their B pawn, is only 2 squares from promotion. Number two, I thought if I was at least even, my only move had to be getting behind that pawn so it couldn't advance. But I had no way of knowing from this position that I was ahead. We're even on material. We each have a rook. Their rook is protected by this pawn, and my king is, kind of trapped because their rook covers this rink and this file. So my king is kind of stuck in a box there due to where their rook is, and I don't think I can catch that pawn with my king, right? It's my turn. If they come down, oh, I could have caught it. Okay, but if I had headed that direction, I'm pretty sure they could have checked me. I don't know, but I only have one move here. And it turns out, when you look at the engine, it's d4. I never would have guessed that, and I'm trying to figure out why. And it says then I would expect them to play rook to h6. But why wouldn't they push the pawn? I've got to find out. If I had found d4, pushing the pawn is not among their moves. It has to be rook to h6 to keep us at -7. If they do anything else, it's a mating sequence. Like if they play g6, but why not b7? If they play b7, I'm supposed to ignore it. Well, that seems really scary to me, because I can't get behind it anymore, and now I can't catch it because I didn't move my king on the previous turn, but I have to play d3. Only move, and I'm up. I have a mate in 9, forced mate in 9, no matter what my opponent does. Their best move is to check me with the rook, and I assume I would take it at that point. And then they wouldn't promote after that. They would check me with this pawn. And now I see it. If they promote, which is what I would expect them to do in this position, I have checkmate. Just clean checkmate. Aside from just giving away their rook, their next best move is to play king to c1. That way, if I checked them, they could get out. But if they play king to c1, I'm going to push this pawn here, e2. And then couldn't they come back? It says that they would, but I would then play rook to e4, and then they would give away the rook. Well, let's say my opponent didn't figure out giving away the rook, but they did see that my pawns were guarding all 4 of those squares, and I have a mate incoming, so they moved their king to c1. I would have to find e2, not d2. Because if I play d2, which is still good for me, they come up beside it. I still have a mate, but my best move would be e2. And now it doesn't matter if whether they give away the rook or play in here. And if they play in here, I would have to find rook to f1 or rook to e4, not protecting my d-pawn. Okay, well, what if I got behind my e-pawn? They're going to take my d-pawn, it says, and then I would promote, or they can check me on f7. Well, backing up, let's say my opponent had seen all of that. Well, let's say I had seen d4. I had realized that I'm not worried about the promotion because I can go here and then checkmate. So if I played this, and then my opponent, let's just say, for hypothetical reasons, they realized that if they pushed the b pawn, I could come forward and they would be in trouble, and they realized they had to get their rook around here. Let's say they played that. Then what would I play? Still d3 is my best move by far, but it would be an only move. Would have to find that. And now my opponent's best move is to check me on h7. And again, it's by far their best move. Would I come toward them, or it looks like e6 or d6 are both okay. Well, let's say I found e6 now. And again, let's say that they realize that they're about to be checkmated, so they didn't just push this pawn. They have to go back to rook to h1 or check me again. So rook to h1, and I'm way ahead, -30. Okay, now I get behind the pawn. If I just play rook to f2, I'm only up -7 again. But if I get behind the pawn over here on the b file, I'm up -14. Wow. Okay. Well, I did not see that that was my only move here, and I got behind the pawn, so now we're even. And I don't know how many moves my opponent has that keep us even, but both of these top two, they can take my f5 pawn, or they can just bring their king toward my e pawn. But instead they played their a pawn, attacking my rook, but that also left us even. I'm supposed to either check or just move up a little bit to stay behind this other pawn. But instead I got beside their a-pawn, which also kept us even. And then I messed up again here in a second. After they pushed that pawn, I have to play d4 or rook to b1 check. Okay, now this one I do understand why it's a mistake. I played e2. Well, they can just take that. Why did I do that? Okay, yeah, that one I know was a mistake. And in fact, I think I remember knowing that it was a mistake during the game. So my opponent's up by a long shot here. But a little bit later, right here in this position, they're still up, and they have multiple moves that keep them there. One is rook to c7, one is rook to b7. There might be others too. I don't know about d7. I've only got 2 lines showing. But c7 and b7 keep us even. But instead, they pushed their g-pawn. Did I say those moves keep us even? Those moves would keep them ahead if they had played one of those. But when they pushed the g-pawn, suddenly we're even. And I'm not sure exactly why. And I will say again, during the game, I was not convinced of that. But I did think if I came back here, I might have a chance to check them. They would have to get in front of this pawn, and I would be able to keep checking them. And I don't know if that's the answer. It says rook to a2 is actually my top move, and rook to wait, that's h5? Oh, wow. I get it now. I think I could have found that if I had sat there and thought about it for a second. Rook to h5 check forces them to take, in which case I get their rook, and I can stop that pawn. Okay, well, what I did was go back to a1. Again, my plan being to check, because their king can't come around this way, so it would have to get here, and I could just check. I could check them all the way across. Now they saw rook to b7, but now it's too late. But now I only have one move, and it has to be checking them. So I checked them. They came over here. I checked them. They moved over. I checked them. And it stayed even from here on out. Because now the problem is I can check them all the way across. If they keep moving back and forth over here, I can just keep checking them. If they come toward me, I can get this pawn. And the reason that I figured that out over here, or at least I thought that I did during the game, I wasn't 100% sure, but the reason that I was able to guess that is because last year I did a bunch of endgame studies, and one of them was the Philidor position, and there was another one that was similar, and I don't remember exactly what they were, and this might not be it at all, but because I looked at those, I remembered that one of the ideas was to get my rook over here and kind of force them to be checked back and forth all the way across until I could get the pawn. And that's why I thought of that. So when I went over there, I don't know what the b7 was about, but it looks like any number of moves would have been okay for them at that point, keeping us even, but they can't get ahead again unless I mess up. So that's why I was able to do this. I mean, they couldn't have gone around behind the pawn because my king is there, so they had to go, on the rook side of that pawn. Now here I wasn't sure if I had to check them again, but I did check them again, and they started going horizontally. Now here I probably could have kept checking even though that's not one of the things listed, but I began to worry if they were able to get their king a little closer and then they were able to check me, I might not have that many moves left, but I guess I would have. I guess I would have had this. Oh no, I know what it was. I thought if I checked them again, they might come here in front of my king and then those squares would be cut off. But I shouldn't have been worried. I could have just kept checking them. But I also thought if we ended up trading rooks at some point, I want my king to already be in front of that pawn. And so that's why I moved my king over here to g8, and that did turn out to be one of the good moves. But now they get a chance. They can check me, they can play rook to b8 check, but if they do, I'm just going to come up toward this pawn, and their king can't come back over to it because my rook's cutting off that file. So if they checked me there, I'm coming up, and then if they check me again, I'm winning the pawn. They didn't check me, they moved up to protect the pawn, but that allows me to come toward it too, which is what the engine says. I didn't realize that during the game, I just decided to keep checking them. And they went back toward the pawn, and I checked them again, and they went away from the pawn. But now their rook's not guarding the pawn anymore. So I came toward it. Now if they check me, I take the pawn. If they get their king out of that line, which they did, I can check them again. And they can't come toward the pawn now because my king's in the way. So they had to move away, and now I can put my rook on that pawn. There's nothing they can do about that except check me again, which they didn't. They just tried to bring their king back. It's not actually my best move, but I know I can draw this if they take my rook, and of course they did, and so it ended up being a draw. So after this game, I was pretty happy that I had studied those specific endgame positions last year because it helped me kind of understand those positions. Again, I didn't fully understand it, and I wasn't 100% certain during the game, but it gave me a lot of confidence and a little bit of understanding of what I had to do in that endgame position as far as keeping that pawn from promoting and staying out of checkmate myself. The previous blunders where I didn't play d4, that I'm not sure. I think I understand it, but I'm not sure I would find it if I had that exact position again a few days in the future. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.